It's another Thunder Thursday on News OK Live. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman, here from the Oklahoman studios, downtown Oklahoma City. Joining me, Thunder beat writer Eric Horn, Thunder beat writer Anthony Slater, Thunder beat writer emeritus.
Yeah, I like that.
Darnell Mayberry. How you like that?
It's pretty good.
Guys, let's talk. It's never too early to start talking about the playoffs, and we only got 2 weeks of the season left. So I might as well. Eric, first round foe for the Thunder. Who's the easier first round foe? Memphis or Portland?
I'd say Memphis. They've pummeled Memphis in at least two of those games this year. That it seemed like when they were on the road in that road game the second time around, they figured out they cracked the code and they ran Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph off the floor. And they're definitely not going to have Gasol in that matchup. A lot of things have changed for Memphis since they played them in the regular season in Memphis. They're a depleted team. So I think they'd much rather face a Memphis team now.
Anthony, jumped the gun. It's between those two now, right?
Yeah, maybe Utah, Houston could potentially jump. They'd really have to play well the last couple weeks, and then, Portland would have to really dip. But I would say it's probably Memphis or Portland, and I'm just looking at who Memphis is playing right now. In their last game, they started Jordan Farmar. They signed him for the rest of the season. They got him out of the D-League.
That's another point guard that Russell Westbrook will try to attack and win a mano-a-mano battle.
40-year-old Vince Carter's playing 23 minutes in the last game. Chris Anderson starting, Birdman. Don't have Marc Gasol. Mike Conley, he should be back for the playoffs, right? But, he hasn't played in a while. I don't know. I think anyone wants the Grizzlies right now. Any of the top four.
By the way, it's worth mentioning, Jordan Farmar's departure for the NBA from UCLA cleared the way for a certain Thunder point guard to get a scholarship.
Russell Westbrook to go to UCLA. Otherwise, we could have seen him he would have been mid-major maybe. San Diego, Creighton. He visited Creighton.
Santa Clara, wasn't it Santa Clara or something?
No, Santa Clara is where his coach and recently got fired.
Dougie McBuckets and Russell Westbrook, I think they would.
That would have been kind of funny, Russell Westbrook on Creighton. I wonder how we would have handled it.
Russell and Westbrook. Russell in Omaha, in fact, Russell Westbrook. Hey, Darnell, Memphis, Portland, who's the easiest of those two?
I'm going to say Portland because of the injuries. But again, Memphis because of the injuries. But I've said on this very desk that I don't think Portland is a team that you should be afraid of or concerned about if you're the Thunder. They've got Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum. But after that, it's not a lot there in Portland that you have to be concerned about. And they're a young team, highly inexperienced when it comes to postseason play. So I think if you got Portland, it wouldn't be the worst thing. But obviously Memphis, because of the injuries, is a better draw.
Guys, to all you, would it be better for playing Memphis? Because Portland and the crowd up there seems to be still a thing, whereas Memphis is sort of on the downward arc of where they were.
Both crowds are going to be pretty rocking. Memphis is wild in the playoffs. I think the fan base would kind of sense that a run is not coming, so maybe they'd be a little bit more tamed, whereas Portland is just happy to be in the playoffs this season because they didn't think so. So, yeah, it'd probably be a rowdier environment. It's a longer flight, that type of stuff. But I'm looking at Portland's front line because you remember Myers Leonard's out for the year now with his shoulder, and they were already super thin in the front line. So Mason Plumlee, Ed Davis, Noah Vonleh, and Chris Kaman. That's their big men trying to contain. Canner on the glass, Adams, Ibaka, and then Kevin Durant playing the four at times. They'd just be overmatched. Damian Lillard might win them a game.
Are you ready to change your answer?
No, because I'm telling you right now, Memphis is an easy series for the Thunder. Portland, I think, is an easy series. Dallas, Utah. I think Game 5 here is the last of the first round. They're going to beat any of those teams in 5 games. Then you just got to worry about the second round.
I'll stay with you, Anthony. Who will be the first round foe?
I think Portland. That's odds on as far as what's Memphis up right now, 2.5, 3 or so. So it's tough to see them making up that ground. It's also tough to see Utah, Dallas, or Houston popping up.
Eric, tough because the Blazers have 2 games left against the history-seeking Golden State Warriors. You think it'll be Portland?
Yeah, I think so. And the Warriors thing's concerning because the Warriors are definitely going for it as we saw last night. But I think as it stands, Portland will be the team that they're in playing.
You make a good point there as far as they get the Warriors twice, the Grizzlies do. And right now I'm looking, Portland's only 2 back of the Grizzlies. So if Portland
Did I
plays
say?
well,
Did I say the Grizzlies have them twice, or Portland has them twice?
I don't know, but I know the Grizzlies do. The Grizzlies have the Warriors, I think, the third to last game and the last game.
Yeah,
I know
that's
twice.
Right.
in
It's
the
right.
last four.
I misspoke. The Grizzlies have
Yeah.
them twice.
Let's look at Portland's schedule. Portland's
be a
got
problem for-
Celtics
yeah.
at home, Heat at home, at Golden State, so they got the Warriors once. At Sacramento, Thunder, Timberwolves, Nuggets. One interesting part about that Thunder game, though, let's say the Thunder want Memphis. That's the second night of a back-to-back for the Thunder in Portland. That's a day to maybe rest everyone, give the Blazers a win to potentially get them over Memphis, and then get Memphis in the first round. We might know who the Thunder want by how they
Does
attack
that really
game.
happen, Darnell? I mean,
Yeah, it happens. I mean, we haven't seen the Thunder do it all that much, or maybe at all, but teams have done it before where they are trying to avoid certain matchups, avoid certain players in the playoffs, and I think that could be a team that you see the Thunder do that
Yeah,
against.
especially because that's a situation where it's not like the Thunder are, mortgaging anything. It might be a good thing for them to rest their players, and they're looking at the schedule and going, that's second night of back-to-back, and we can give Portland a win. Why not?
Yeah. Key on the schedule here is Minnesota and Denver. Those are the
Yeah.
Blazers' final two games. Those could be huge games for Portland in terms of leapfrogging Memphis. And you talked about Memphis having Golden State twice toward the end of the season.
Let's look right now.
including the
Huge.
last game, Memphis against the,
Okay,
the
they're-
Golden State Warriors, right?
Yeah. And they're 2-2 this season, so now I got to look at who has the tiebreaker, because it might come down to a tiebreaker in that sense. So keep talking, I'll look who has the tiebreaker.
Okay, let's go to the next question. Back to the Thunder in this case, specifically Serge Ibaka. Guys, I think it was, whose story was it? When Serge Ibaka said, it's really hard playing so hard on defense and not getting the ball.
Yeah,
his comments, Eric, were, how would you characterize those comments?
See, at the time, I guess they came off to me as kind of, well, just don't worry about getting the ball, do what you have to do. But then I sit back and I think about it, and I'm like, it probably is tough for a guy like Serge Ibaka, who knows he's capable of making shots, to do the work that he does on defense. And not just this year, but the entire time he's been a Thunder player, he's been the primary defensive guy. He's been the stopper. And it probably is tough to watch Russell Westbrook let a guy go by him gambling for a steal. I mean, that probably is frustrating for Serge. And now, I don't know if it means get more shots, but it might mean, give me some help on defense more than anything.
How about it, Darnell? How would you characterize that?
Spot
comment?
on. I thought his comments were spot on. No one wants to go out there and bust their tail on defense, like Serge said, and not get rewarded offensively. And Serge has become less and less a part of the offense as the years have gone on. Russell Westbrook is now getting the ball to Steven Adams on pick and rolls, dives to the basket, things like that. And Serge Ibaka, that pick and pop that we used to see 2-3 years ago, is not there nearly as much as it used to be. So, Serge Ibaka is standing in the corner, and we sort of ridicule him for it or chastise him for doing that. But that's sort of his role in this offense. But he's still trying to, or expected to bust his hump defensively. And I just think he gets tired of standing in the corner and waiting for the ball. Sometimes it never comes.
Anthony, spot on. What's your characterization of those comments?
I'll try to put it in perspective. He's like the last one out of the locker room at all times, and this was a completely empty locker room. He just had a good game in Toronto, and I was writing about him, so I had to wait, and that's like, the worst part of our jobs when we know we have to write about Serge, because you got to wait an hour. Nobody's in the locker room. He actually did an interview in Spanish first, and it was just me and him talking, and he was, I think within the quote, he said, you know what, I'm going to be honest with you, man. Like, the only thing that surprised me is the timing of the quote. You would think that was a quote that comes when they've lost 3 of 4, and his stats were down. Like, he just had 2 of his better games in the last month. So I'm a little surprised he said it, but it tells you what his mindset was within the losses and when he's struggling. And like these guys are saying, I understand it. It's like carry the load defensively, do the dirty work, alter shots, always be energized. But then on the other end, Enes Kanter can actually catch, so we're going to go to him in the pick and roll more. We're going to stop doing those pick and pops that were such a big part of the offense. I mean, his shots are down. Pretty much his numbers across the board are down. But they still expect him to be that guy defensively. So maybe the answer is to give him a few more pick and pops a game, and he'll start playing better defense.
I got an idea for more shots for Serge Ibaka. Go get the ball off the offensive glass and put it back in.
But one thing you got to remember, people say this, but like there's a reason the Thunder offense works so well and is working a little bit better this season. It's because Serge Ibaka is a great shooter and he spaces it. And you use Adams and Kanter as the guys that go get the rebounds. You use Ibaka as a guy that brings the defense out. I mean, that's just his role. That's what he's talking about. It's tough when his role is to be in the corner to make a defender come out. Or if it doesn't, okay, I'll shoot.
The counter to that is playing small. Put Kevin at the 4, leave Serge at the 5 so he doesn't have to be out there as much and he can be closer to the basket.
He's not as good as diving to the basket or rolling the basket as those other guys.
And he's not as good as eating offensive rebounds as Enes Kanter is.
Right. Yeah, and the big issue in all this is then you're throwing Enes Kanter and Steven Adams, your 22 and 23-year-old, up-and-comers on the bench, and you're then playing Kyle Singler more, Dion Waiters more, all the wings that have all these issues. Like, that's what happens when you downsize.
It's an issue. I also thought that it was a bit of an issue for Serge to be speaking out like that, but it was refreshing. Thanks for getting the quote, Anthony. Next question. Speaking about something speaking out, Reggie Jackson's actions spoke much louder than his words. I know you guys talk about it on the Thunder Buddies podcast, a long podcast. You can read
50 minutes of fantastic
55
content.
minutes, actually. But anyway, not that anybody's counting. The end-of-game actions by Reggie Jackson in Detroit Tuesday night were, Darnell, start with you.
Over the top. It was ridiculous. I mean, he was obviously trying to send a message to his former team and teammates. He went a little too far with it. He was celebrating a win. It wasn't a huge win. It was sort of a big win for Detroit in playoff positioning, seedings, things like that. But it was over the top. He didn't play well. It was a sloppy game. The entire game was ugly. But Detroit got a much-needed win for their sake. But Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka did not play in that game. They started Dion Waiters and Kyle Singler. You can't celebrate like that in a regular season victory against a team that didn't play 2 starters. So I thought it was over the top.
Anthony, what
That
was
was
it?
a sigh of relief for me because I'm sitting there, on press row like, man, how am I going to write this game? Like, oh, Josh Hustis has had a nice night. They played all right. Like, I need a storyline here. And then he's going running around the court doing this, and everyone's yelling at him. And it was like, all right, now I got an interesting story. Expected, a long time coming. I mean, I kind of understand it a little bit from Reggie's side of things. He hasn't. Think about all the things that happened last year, and then the Dion Waiters, and just like how it all ended, and then the game here this year. I mean, when Westbrook and then Durant says, he starts talking about the Pistons. He says, Andre Drummond, their best player, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, their second best player. Like, they were taking veiled shots at him, and he's been waiting for this. And it didn't come against a full stock Thunder team, but whatever. I'm kind of happy he did it because it gave Russell Westbrook a chance to speak out of him, and it gave us a nice little front page story.
What about Eric? What was it?
It was the exposure of a double standard that the Thunder have. Westbrook celebrates all the time after dunks. Now, you could say like it's time and place, and that's what I first thought about it because, it's a basically inconsequential loss for the Thunder. Whether they win or lose, it doesn't matter. And Reggie's over there doing his hand thing. But for Reggie, it is important because they're in the middle of the playoff race, as Darnell said. For Reggie personally, it's important because he got one up on the team that he used to be with. But from a Thunder perspective, for Russell Westbrook to be upset about it, for Kevin Durant to be upset about it, Steph Curry and Andre Iguodala came in here a few months ago and walked all over the peak floor. I would find that more insulting, them doing that on my home court than Reggie doing that in his. So
Now,
it's kind of like,
in defense of the Warriors, I think he did hit the longest three-point shot on record. I mean, a shot, not a heave. They are going for history. Reggie was what, 4 or 5 of?
4 of 14, I think, in the game, something like that. Though, I understand what people are saying as far as like Russell celebrates, other people celebrate. Why are you mad? But like, there was a message attached to it. Clearly, I mean, like, if you have to know the history to understand, it wasn't just like, hey, we had a big win today. It was like, hey, let's go right now. I mean, I think
it's personal. It is personal because if it's anybody but Reggie Jackson, I don't think those guys have a problem with it. Steph Curry did worse. Andre Iguodala danced for a full 30 seconds. I watched them the entire time. But you know what? They can't say anything about those guys because they're champions and they're winners. And to them, Reggie Jackson is not on their caliber. And he's this guy that they have bad blood with.
Plus, it wasn't just celebration. Like, things were said. He was talking to the bench. They were talking back. Him and Steven Adams had a long conversation.
What was said there? That was an interesting thing. Somebody was lined up for a free throw, and Adams turned his back on the basket and stood like this and was saying something to Reggie.
I asked both, and neither of them would say what exactly was said. You could tell Adams was pissed off, and somebody said he said, "Look at the standings, mate. Look at the standings." I don't know. I mean, it's tough to read lips, especially he's got the big stash going over it, but. I mean, clearly, you never really see Steven Adams like that. Usually he's the one that's just like robotic on the line. So.
And Nick Collison, you wrote, was
Nick
talking
Collison. They all were really. I mean, even Billy Donovan post game, within the media session, he was like, "Yeah, it seemed a little bit over the top, but I like Stan Van Gundy." And then afterwards, I talked to Billy a little bit, and he was like, "That was a little weird," but he doesn't have the history that the others.
No, he doesn't. And everything with Reggie, from the collapsing in the arms of Durant or Westbrook after the game in Memphis, everything seems to be up a couple notches.
Yeah, he's
with him.
emotional.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of something up a couple notches, guys, the Warriors are stalking history. Last night on League Pass, some of us were watching, corresponding as they won, game number 68. Another one of those games that looked like it was over, and then it wasn't over. They won it in overtime. So true or false, Darnell, the Warriors will win a league record 73 games.
I'm going to say true. And it took me until basically last night to get to this point. And it's so tough. You can have so many things go wrong, an injury here, an off night there. To be able to do it is incredibly difficult, but I think the schedule now breaks in their favor. They have so many home games left of their, I think, 7 left. I think 5 of them are home games, something like that. And the schedule isn't that tough for them. They got Memphis, an injured Memphis team twice on the schedule, San Antonio, which could be resting its star players down the stretch. So I think that it's all set up for them to do it, and I think they will. They're clearly focused on being able to get that goal, which is interesting to me because Steve Kerr was a member of that 95-96 Bulls team that got the record. What's he going to do? Is he going to want it as a coach, or is he going to want that feather in his cap as a player? So I'm going to be interested to see what Steve Kerr does.
That's a great point.
It is. If I'm Steve Kerr, I want to get it as the coach, and then I can say I had the two. You know what I mean? I had as a player and a coach. But you're right. I mean, last night was probably their most losable game in the last 10. It was on a back-to-back at Utah. Boston at home, Portland at home, Minnesota at home. Spurs will probably rest. And at Memphis, at San Antonio, back at home versus Memphis. I think they'll get it. What this whole season showed me, which maybe is the biggest concern about the Warriors, is like they always win late games. They're so good in those close games. We saw it down here, everywhere. They just seem to always make the plays late in games, and playoff games are going to be close. What the Thunder have shown late in games, and what the Warriors have shown late in games, maybe should concern you more than anything, as far as the Thunder fan. Because I do think the Thunder can compete and be in every game with the Warriors, but how can you think who's going to close better? How can you say it's going to be the Thunder?
They close in so many ways. Yeah. We talked about Draymond Green, the block out, the dunk, the pass, the feed on the wing. So many plays he made down the stretch. Did they get it or not? True or false?
They get it. Yeah, they definitely get it. I mean, they'd have to go, 5-3 in the last few games.
That'd be tied. They got to go 6-2.
6-2. Well, I mean, San Antonio, like you said, is going to be resting guys. I mean, Memphis has something to play for. The rest of those games, they're going to be favored in. And to me, last night, just watching the way that they went about that game and the intensity they had, and I saw Steph Curry play defense last night. That's what was most impressive to me. And everybody's been banging on that guy all year, having cover and not being able to play defense against guys like Russell Westbrook or whatever. Steph Curry stepped in and played some serious defense last night, and I think that inspired him a little bit too. And then you had the Draymond Green factor.
Against the vaunted Rodney Hood, against guys,
Shelvin Mack.
against guys who are really not any threat to do any
Hayward.
deep penetration, if you know what I mean.
Oh, that's low. That's low.
Shots fired.
One thing about this is people will the Warriors rest? I think they're confident enough to say they're going to sweep the first round. Then they're going to get 8 days, 9 days of rest before the second round. When they'll play a Clippers team, then I'm pretty confident they think they'll take care of them too. So they know rest is coming over the next 2 months if they just play well.
Okay, the talk of the NBA this week was what happened and what is happening in the Lakers locker room after
It's a weird week.
It's a weird week.
The Lakers part was so bad that it overshadowed the Kyrie thing. And the Kyrie thing was bad.
With the Reggie thing was right in the middle of it all too.
Well, let's talk about the thing of the thing of the thing of
Let's
the
think
Lakers.
about all the things.
D'Angelo Russell, tape records, Nick Young talking about
Iggy Azalea.
Iggy Azalea.
Well, talking
and
about
Cheating
not
on
net-
Iggy
cheating
Azalea.
on her, basically.
cheating
Infidelity.
on his
Fiance.
fiance, right. It gets posted on the internet, unbeknownst, apparently, to Russell. Yesterday,
Well,
before
apparently the conversation was in like December or so.
yesterday before the Lakers game, both come forward, talk. Byron Scott talks. Your guy, that Byron Scott talks. Clearing of the air. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to start with you, Anthony. If you had to have one of them as a teammate, Russell, Young, who would you pick?
Russell, because he's better. He's just a better player. He's 19. He's young. One thing I'll say about this whole thing, I don't like how like Russell has really been painted as like the bad guy in all this, and I'm not like okay, what he did was like dumb, but like nobody's really talking like Nick Young talking about cheating on his girl. Like that's like isn't that the worst part of all this? Like I understand that it shouldn't have got out and like you know it's bro code, whatever you want to say within the locker room, but I don't know. I feel like Nick Young's maybe getting off a little too freely in this whole saga.
Eric,
I don't think Nick's getting off really at home. I think Iggy's going to catch him when he gets home.
Well, as she should, right?
Oh, most certainly. I'd take D'Angelo Russell because he has upside. As Anthony said, one, he's a better player. Two, he has not just upside on the court, but he has growth off the court upside. Nick Young's 30 years old.
He is who he is.
What is Nick? Yeah, Nick Young's going to be who he is. He's going to jack shots. He's going to be Swaggy P. He gave himself a nickname. So with D'Angelo Russell, like we talked about before, he apologized. He came forward, said, "I'm sorry." At least he has. You know he's not going to do that again in the locker room. Otherwise, he's done. I mean,
we have a consensus for him here, Darnell. So I'll say this: is giving yourself a nickname. Does that move up the sins on the bro code too? I mean, is that pretty high, giving yourself a nickname?
Yeah, you're not supposed to give yourself a nickname. Someone else has to give you a nickname. But I'm going to answer the question, and I think you guys are crazy because I'm going with Swaggy P. I'd rather have him as a teammate. I'd rather have a teammate that I can trust that is not as good of a player, but I can trust him, than a teammate that is a better player that I can't trust.
Okay, you're the Memphis Grizzlies GM or whoever, you're whatever GM right now, and somebody calls you and say, I want to trade either Nick Young or I need to get one of these guys out of my locker room. We want to give you one for a second-round pick. You want Nick Young or you want D'Angelo Russell?
I'm the Grizzlies GM.
Whoever, you're whatever GM in the league.
I'm not touching D'Angelo Russell because he's going to come in the locker
He's
room
good.
and no one's going to trust him. He's ruined his reputation in the basketball community with what he's done. And that's going to take a long time to build back up.
I know what you're saying, and like I'm not saying like this doesn't strike his reputation, but number one, Nick Young is Nick Young, and two, like if he's just good next year and he's averaging 22 points per game and 8 assists, like I don't really care if they're trusting him too much. I mean, it's important, but if you get a 19, 20-year-old former second-round pick who looks like he has huge upside, you're just taking that.
Is
But
there
so much of basketball is chemistry.
It
And
is.
you got these 5 players on the court that have to gel together.
Yeah, Nick
and
Young,
if 4 of them
fantastic.
don't gel with D'Angelo Russell, you've got a big-time problem.
They beat the Heat last night. One night after losing by 48 points, is that right? Or 2 nights after losing by 48 points? Something's changed.
Well, one thing you got to remember.
They got it out in the air.
Number one, Russell's 19, which stuff
Going on
happens.
14, according to some of the Lakers.
Yeah, no, I think Byron Scott has not handled him fantastically this year, but and he didn't like post it himself and like like it's just Snapchat or how like he didn't want it to come out. You know what I mean? Like he made a mistake and he shouldn't have been videotaping it and like he should know better in the social media world or whatever. But like, you know what I mean? I don't think the mistake was like there was no evil intent behind it. Like I'm gonna tape this and then put it out. It was just a dumb kid doing a dumb kid thing. Whereas 30-year-old Nick
There's
Young,
a trust question all around.
Yeah,
There's
but
trust questions
it's.
all
I mean, you
around.
were talking about you want D'Angelo Russell, or it's not like you're then talking about Kendrick Perkins or some like great vet leader. We're talking about Nick Young.
Swaggy P. Hey, that's all for this edition of Thunder Thursday, but you can stay with the best coverage team every day at News OK and every morning in the Oklahoman.